feeling a little bit better. So welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, to the WeAreChange news show. And being honest with you guys, a lot of times I do question myself whether what I'm doing here is meaningful or helpful, or if it even has a purpose, especially on social media platforms that censor and demote us, mainly because we criticize them and other social media giants and who actually runs them and their operations. But today I actually turned on the boob tube and turned on CNN, and my goodness, the level of deception, the lies, propaganda, disinformation, psychological warfare that's happening out there right now, so many distractions, so it has reinvigorated me to keep doing these videos almost every day. So thank you, CNN, and thank you for everyone who supports our work and keeps us fully independent and fully free, working for you, the people, which news and media should be about, and not for corporations, governments, or any other special interests that control the free flow of information. And the best way to control the population is, of course, with bread and circuses, with distractions that don't actually matter. Like this news that's dominating the mainstream media headlines today, that the NFL has a new policy on the national anthem. Players and teams will now be fined for not standing for the national anthem, which I really don't care about if you're even triggered by this, because it has no relevancy on anyone's life. But you should know that a lot of times when you do see forms of patriotism during major sports games, that it's usually being engineered by the DoD and the National Guard that are paying the NFL and have paid the NFL a combined $12.3 million between 2011 and 2015 to demonstrate their patriotism to you. You know, just another psychological program propaganda effort by the U.S. government to increase recruitment of U.S. soldiers. And when you're watching these sports ball games, remember, when you're seeing these acts of patriotism, they're not doing it voluntarily. You paid for it. Another dumbass news that everyone's talking about today, West Hollywood proclaimed it as Stormy Daniels Day after the former porn star and actually gave her a key to the city, which gives a great example to the American youth that yes, you can have sex with a very rich man for money in order to keep that event secret, take that money and then not keep it secret and run your mouth anyway and still be given a key to a city. There's also someone that got water thrown on them, and a 30-year-old that didn't move out of his parents' home that got sued, that actually has no relevancy in your life and is not the news. Moving forward from all the distractions that are happening, let's actually talk about the meat and potatoes, the biscuits and gravy of this broadcast, and that of course is the deep state, which is in the news right now mainly because of Donald Trump's tweets. Specifically the one where he just tweeted, "Look how things turned around on the criminal deep state." Now, of course, this is a story that everyone else is talking about, and this is Trump's allegation that there was a spy within his presidential campaign in 2016. Now, Donald Trump is calling this Spygate and saying that this could be one of the biggest political scandals in history, and the former FBI director, James Comey, even responding, saying, quote, "The FBI's use of confidential human sources is, quote, tightly regulated and essential to protecting the country." Now, watching the cancer-inducing mainstream media, specifically CNN today, you are hearing a lot of news about Trump's conspiracy theories. Trump is wrong. Now, here at WeAreChange, we're not fans of Donald Trump, but we got to call it like we see it. And there are a lot of ridiculous headlines, like one from the Washington Post that said, quote, "The FBI didn't use an informant to go after Trump. They used one to protect him." And even the New York Times saying today that the FBI used an informant to investigate Russia ties and not to spy on Trump, as he claims. So even if you know just a little bit about intelligence agencies or how they operate, you know that this is all complete disinformation coming from the mainstream media today. And now this story gets very interesting when we actually look at the person that was this spy. And the Department of Justice intentionally painted a picture of this informant as some kind of super secret, high-level covert intelligence asset. And he actually wasn't. He was an informant who has worked in Washington for years, providing information primarily to the CIA. Primarily a very unethical program that oversaw a CIA spying operation in the 1980 presidential election, where this spy, reportedly under the direction of former CIA director and then vice president candidate George H.W. Bush, got caught running a spying operation from inside the Carter administration, where he knowingly passed classified information about Jimmy Carter's, our previous president's, foreign policy to Reagan's campaign officials in order to ensure that Ronald Reagan's campaign knew of any foreign policy decisions that Carter was considering. And now James Comey, the Washington Post, the New York Times are all trying to convince us that this same guy who infiltrated Trump's campaign in 2016 was supposedly protecting America. I'm sorry, but that story doesn't add up when you look at the spy's previous experience, and it only shows and highlights the bigger connection that the Washington Post and the New York Times have to these intelligence agencies. And we're also finding out today that it wasn't just one spy, but potentially a second spy from the NSA that actually offered Hillary Clinton's emails to the Trump campaign. Now, this is a very serious case, but of course very serious implications, as even the Robert Mueller investigation on Donald Trump has been already able to get 5 guilty pleas so far. But they are predominantly for, quote, false statements, which Michael Flynn pled guilty to. So did Rick Gates, George Papadopoulos, Alexander von der Zwaan. But even with that, hasn't proved any Russian collusion at all, which was supposed to be the purpose of this investigation, but now looks like an all-out witch hunt. And the mainstream media has to concede with that, with the Washington Post saying that there's no evidence of Spygate and that Trump invented it one day, and then the second day saying how the FBI's informants' outreach to Trump staffers fits into the overall investigation of how this is proceeding. Now, of course, all this information has sparked a debate whether this is Donald Trump fighting the actual deep state. Other people say that this is the left-wing establishment versus the right-wing establishment, which does make sense. And others are saying that Donald Trump was a target of the deep state when he was running and now is capitulating to them, which could make sense since the spy was specifically looking after Jimmy Carter's foreign policy, which when Donald Trump was campaigning was sort of similar, calling for anti-interventionism, calling for bringing the troops back and ending the big global conflicts and tensions that are happening all around the world. Of course, Trump campaigned on that, but he completely backtracked on that when he became president of the United States. And I think Glenn Greenwald puts it very correctly when he said, quote, Trump only hates the deep state when it acts against him. When it acts against others, he loves it or is indifferent to it. He's unleashed them both internationally and domestically, drowned them with money, authorized limitless missions, and that, quote, his opposition is purely self-interested. And on one hand, you do see Donald Trump tweeting against the supposed deep state, but he has also personally allowed and approved record-high black budget spy funding requests, increasing their budgets, which directly goes to their shadowy intelligence agencies' unaccountable operations, which are supposedly funneled against him by the deep state. He also helped push and celebrated the confirmation of a CIA torturer as the next CIA head, who, if there ever was a deep state asset or even action figure, it would definitely be Gina Haspel. And when it comes to this supposed deep state allegations and conspiracies, I do believe people are being duped here, including people like U.S. Senator Rand Paul that said he talked to Donald Trump's pick as Secretary of State during his nomination, who supposedly talked to him in private and said that regime change really hasn't worked that well in the Middle East, which convinced Rand Paul to vote for him as Secretary of State and approve him, to now where Pompeo is saying his plan B for Iran is designed to put the U.S. on a path to forcible regime change in the Middle East. Trump has surrounded himself with deep state operatives like John Bolton that compromised peace talks with North Korea, which even Donald Trump is expecting to delay and is putting all the blame on China on. He has also personally ended the Iran nuclear deal, which of course raises tensions in the Middle East and the possibilities of war, especially now as we're finding out today that Iran is quietly advancing its missile technology, which has also consequently raised gas prices all around the world, and now there's $5 a gallon in New York City, while at the same time fortifying U.S. military positions inside of Syria, as we found out today that more bases are being built in that country, which goes along with the covert operations and regime change goals that the, quote, deep state has had for decades now when it comes to the government in Syria. Military tensions have been rising all over the world to even where 2 days ago Sweden is telling its citizens to prepare for a conflict in a Cold War style booklet that they're giving out to their citizens, which of course all of this directly helps and boosts the military industrial complex, aka the deep state, aka the intelligence agencies, and all the covert operations that they have been working on for a while now. So again, just to reiterate, hypothetically, what is most likely happening is that this is the left-wing establishment versus the right-wing establishment, or hypothetically speaking, Donald Trump, who was against all of this when he was campaigning to be president of the United States, which was a major component to what got him elected, was in fact someone who actually wanted to do these things and was co-opted by the deep state, which he is very much a part of now. Those are the two possibilities that I see here, but most importantly, What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below, which of course we answer as soon as this video comes out. Now, for more context on this story, I definitely recommend you watch one of our previous videos, which is called What is the Deep State? Explained, which will be in the description of this video, just so you can understand some of the terms we're using here and what the deep state actually is. Again, everything I said here will be sourced in our Steemit post and also on my Twitter, twitter.com/LukeWeAreChange. So of course you could fact check everything yourself, which is important to do since a lot of news organizations obviously have an agenda and they want to push you to a certain outcome. The main outcome that I hope I get is that you guys become critical of all the information you consume and you start thinking for yourselves without, of course, giving away all your power and prompting somebody else above you, which is critically important to do in these days, especially in the asinine distraction propaganda psychological warfare that's happening against all of us. So yeah, that's today's broadcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So if you like this video, share it with your friends and family members. Once again, thank you to everyone keeping us fully independent and running. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here, and that's why I end every single broadcast by saying, I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more.